Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Neitzke. Well, I've got a little special beginning of the year episode here for 2025. Am I the only person who feels like that sounds like it hasn't happened yet or it can't happen yet? 2025, 50 years ago, 1975? That doesn't feel like 50 years ago. Anyways, here we go. This episode is a strategy to support you and those that you serve as you head into this year. Because it's that weird time of the year where we have the opportunity to make big changes in our lives. It's resolution time. And lots of people are looking into the future with those grandiose ideas of personal transformations and life-altering goals. I sound sarcastic because I am. It's one of the few times of the year or my life that I get really deeply sarcastic about an opportunity. The opportunity to be totally different tomorrow when I wake up. Because magically tomorrow I'm not going to desire those cookies and I'm going to start working out more and I'm going to. And so often, so many people around me and on previous episodes I've discussed work really, really hard for about 3 days. And then they go back and say, you know what? Next year. Not going to happen, friends. Do you know why? Because I'm an optimist by nature for everyone and anything. I will always bet on myself and you if you believe in it. So let's actually do something this year that's going to be different so that I don't have to be sarcastic on December 31st, 2025. Let's think about this for a second because resolutions, they're pretty awesome. However, it's kind of silly season for resolutions right now. The majority of people will set goals for the new year about losing weight, quitting something, or starting something new. And that's admirable, and it's something we should be doing. We should be working on personal, continuous improvement. Many of us gorged over the holidays looking forward to January 1st when it's all going to be different until you walk past the cabinet and a little cookie longingly calls out your name, Ted. Oh, those Oreos. I hear them all the time. Let's make 2025 different. Let's resolve to stick to our resolutions. Seriously, let's do it. Let's do it differently. Now, before we get into the process, let's do some smart thinking reminders. First of all, we're all leaders because a leader is anyone who has influence over another person, giving us all the opportunity every minute of the day to change the direction of other people by simply being ourselves. And if we're constantly working on ourselves and improving ourselves, guess what? More people will look to us to lead. We're also followers while leading. In other words, we do have missions. We do have other people that we have to be around. We do need to collaborate with others. We do need to hold ourselves accountable for our own engagement. We do need to seek solutions instead of seeking blame. And most importantly, as a follower, it's really, really important to believe in those that lead us, which is why we're all leaders and followers at the same time, because constantly looking for new ways to be better is what we do. We follow other people who lead, and we lead other people who follow. We're also buffaloes. You know what that is. Those are people who see a storm, turn and face it, go to it, and charge through it. Why? Because it's the fastest way to sunshine and starry nights, by going into that storm that we are facing. And it's the greatest behavior in the world. Now, the counter behavior, our friends, the cows, who turn their backs to the storms, try to walk away from them and ignore them, well, they always succumb to the storm and end up being more miserable than ever before, finding themselves blaming everyone for the situation that they put themselves in, and failing to recognize that it's their own choices that give them the opportunities to be who they can be and who they want to be, which is why today's conversation is going to be fun. And finally, the last thing that smart thinkers do is we always lead with two behaviors. Number one, empathy, and number two, reflection. Constantly wondering what it would be like to be the people around us that we serve and support, constantly asking ourselves, what would I need if I were them, and regularly reflecting upon, how was my impact today? What did I get to do for other people? And finally, what can I do better tomorrow to serve more? That's what we are. We're smart thinkers. And we are all of those things. Leaders, followers, buffaloes, empathetic human beings who are constantly thinking of how to improve. Okay, let's get into this. Now, I want you to remember something. I'm a historian by training. I love that title, by the way. It's what my undergraduate degree is in. History, political science, and physical geography. I love all three of those things. But I am now a historian by training who teaches and leads. And my fascination for history began long ago as I met teachers in my life who were like meteorologists who could predict the future by using our past, looking at past principles, past behaviors, past events, and saying, these are going to happen again. They did that by weaving in great stories, combining things that were both relevant and unique together so that I could learn about them. I learned over the course of my life that there really is nothing new under the sun, only new people that discover it and experience it on their own time. Yes, there are inventions and new technologies, but the problems, even with those new technologies, seem to be the same. And a lot of them are people-driven, people who don't reflect, people who don't know history, and people who continue to believe that they can do it differently than it's ever been done before, which is an awesome belief, by the way. The best way to improve upon all of this in our life is to reflect and look back at your year's pluses and deltas. Now remember, the pluses are the things that went well in your life, and the deltas are the things that you would change. Change. Not the things that you don't like that didn't go well. We don't need to doom scroll backwards through our calendar and find all of the ways in which we were not successful. We need to find all of the ways in which that we learned and that we can apply moving forward into the future. For instance, we are currently living in a really cool time. And when you think about it through history, the for instance here is that we're living in the 20s. I know I can't, friends, I cannot say that out loud and not think of the 1920s. Old Model T cars and bars on the corner and jazz clubs and short dresses and crazy times in American history with all these cool things that happened long ago. But you know what? It's not long ago. The 20s are now the 2020s. It's 2025 this year. We're halfway through the 20s. As a matter of fact, in 3 days, we'll be closer to the 2030s than we were to the 2020s. Anyways, I want you to think about this for a second. We're living in the 20s, and Gen Z will look back at this decade as their favorite. Yeah, their favorite. They'll say this was the best music, the best movies and shows. When they're in their 40s, they'll mock AI, iPhones, COVID, streaming services, and other technologies we are currently amazed by because it will be so yesterday to them. I mean, I'm an 80s guy. I was born in 1971. I grew up in the 80s. The best music ever, the best movies ever, the best food ever. Rotating between quarter pounders and Whoppers while cruising around in my small town in my yellow Ford Escort station wagon, cranking U2, Def Leppard, New Order, and Run DMC on the same mixtape, then driving down to Milwaukee to sneak into Top Gun because I wasn't 17 yet, and then after that heading over to the Attic West and Underage Dance Club. Come on, those were the best times. And that's what every generation says. And that's what everybody looks back when they look back in a longing way. In other words, a long time ago. Many times we look at a past year and we say whew, that year went fast. Not really much happened. Well, anyways, I bring all this up because as we move forward into 2025, we need to get a grip on the realities of our behaviors and our habits. Listen, looking back at your year, what worked? Looking back over the last decade, what worked? And looking back over the course of your life, what works when it comes to you being better? Yeah, what works when it comes to you being better? What worked this year, this last 10 years, and over the course of your life? Who knows you better than you? Seriously, there is no one on the planet who can do a better reflection over the course of your life than you. What works for you? What are the cyclical things in your life that no matter what you do by yourself or for yourself, you find success? And also, what are the things that you find difficult? What storms did you get through this year, and what storms did you get stuck in, or what storms did you run away from, and why? Now, before I get into the process, I want to tell you a quick story, because I'm very excited about the process, because I think I've found a way for all of us to actually stick to our resolutions. All right, the story. When I was a classroom teacher, I taught 2 subjects, ancient civilization and U.S. history. Basically, I taught the beginning of recorded time and U.S. history from Civil War to modern times. I learned so much, and as I grew in my knowledge as a teacher, I saw patterns. Each year, I would start out with a list of Mr. Knightsky's predictions. I would write up on the board a checklist of the 10 things that will happen this year. My students would kind of mockingly be like, those things are not going to happen, Mr. Knightsky. How do you even know those things will happen? And, well, guess what? Every year, I was 10 for 10. Here are some examples. I would say we will watch the news and see people crying that their homes were destroyed by hurricanes and washed into the ocean or into the Gulf. And people will be very upset by the fact that they built their dream home 100 feet from the largest body of water in the universe. There will be unrest in the Middle East. There will be tornadoes that strike the central part of the country. A toy will be sold this year that will cause normally calm parents to fist fight at Walmart. I was a real hero with my kids the year Tickle Me Elmo was out there. We will hear that a foreign nation is a threat to our jobs and our economy, and we will see things that have happened historically repeat themselves in real time. I would give these long lists of 10 things with examples, and usually, by the time we got to Thanksgiving, they were all checked off, and I could do a second semester Mr. Knightsky's predictions. But by that time, the students would be able to participate along with me. And my students and I would find these things to all come true. We would follow current events, and I would share historical examples of everything happening. My students learned really quickly that they could get me off track by just bringing up some current events article that was really juicy. I remember one time losing track of time and burning through an entire hour explaining why Nikes were so expensive. I had one student, Neil. Man, I love that guy. He used to wind me up. And he would bring in these articles that just got me thinking and moving and sharing and showing. This is today, this is yesterday, this is years ago, and this is how this worked. Anyway, sorry. Looking today at your own history is important, and that's why I'm going to share with you the secret to disrupting the patterns of history and what to do so you can keep to your resolutions. Wait, now I'm a little bit distracted here as a history teacher, so put on your seatbelt. It's going to be 2025. By the time you're listening to this, it likely is 2025. So let's take a look at what the world was doing 100 years ago and see if we're repeating anything. Okay? So let's start with January 1st of 2025. The Syrian Federation is officially dissolved, the state of Aleppo and the state of Damascus being their replacement. They replaced the state of Syria. Do you know what's going on today in Syria? Yeah, it's breaking up. Its government fled, and the people are taking over, and they're moving towards a different style of government, potentially even breaking up Syria. The exact same thing that happened 100 years ago. We have a new president sworn in 100 years ago by the name of Calvin Coolidge. We'll have a new president sworn in here in a few days. The jazz age of Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington beginning to record their first music, and the Charleston becoming the most popular dance happened 100 years ago. We have new styles of music being recorded every minute across the planet because of how technology has changed. There is no longer a need for an arm holding a needle that goes on a piece of wax with little tiny vibrations pressed into it. You can take your music anywhere at any time. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald is published 100 years ago. The Scopes Monkey Trial was 100 years ago. Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryant debated the teaching of evolution in Tennessee schools 100 years ago. You think we're going to deal with any of that now? We are. Nellie Ross was Wyoming's first female governor. As a matter of fact, she was the first elected female governor in the United States. This year, there are 13 female governors in the United States and only a handful of states who have not yet had a female governor. The Chrysler Corporation was founded this year. We are projected to see 7 new car companies in 2025. When the Chrysler Corporation was founded in 1925, it was one of a handful of car corporations that went national. There were lots of little regional car corporations, and weirdly, we're working our way back to that, where lots of nations are now starting to move themselves into the EV market. We will see all types of new technologies like they did in 1925. Heck, the Grand Ole Opry radio show began in 1925, and it still plays on weekends in 2025. But now it's not just on the radio. It's beamed down to us by satellites. In 1925, the largest city in the world used to be London, but by 1925, it becomes New York City. New York City in 1925 had 6.2 million people in it. Today, it has 8.2 million people in it. But it is no longer the largest city in the world. The largest city in the world in 2025 has 37 million people in it, and it's in Tokyo. It's not in Tokyo. It is Tokyo. In 1925, Mount Rushmore was proposed for the first time. Yeah, that's right. and it was completed in 1941. Today, there's something called the Giant. The Giant is a 54-foot-tall moving statue which will open at American Dreams, the mall in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It's supposed to open in the next few weeks. It's the world's tallest moving statue and will be a centerpiece of the mall. It's a giant statue constructed entirely of LED lights. Do you know what that means? That means that it can transform into anything, anyone, at any time. It's 54 feet tall. Now, just for reference, each head on Mount Rushmore is 60 feet, which means this moving statue, which can transform into anything and is using the most recent technology, is only 6 feet smaller than one of the presidents on Mount Rushmore. Friends, there is nothing new. It's just different. Heck, Jimmy Carter, who just passed away the other day, sadly, he was 2 months old on January 1st, 1925. Think about that. 2 years old. Today, there are 101,000 centurions in the United States. Those are people who were alive on January 1st, 1925. In 1925, do you know how many centurions there were in the world? Less than 100. In 1977, Jimmy Carter was my age. He was 53. The first TV was used in 1925. Water skis were patented, and now for $68,000, you can buy a water jetpack to fly above the lake. Now, let's just look at 50 years ago when I was 4. When I was 4, they were still fighting for women's rights, and it was the International Women's Year for the United Nations. Lee Elder became the first black golfer at the Masters. Desegregation in a golf tournament happened when I was 4 years old? How is that even possible? How is that even still talked about? How is that even still a thing in the 70s? Well, it was. And the TV, which was invented 50 years prior to 1975, well, they had a little addition to it called Betamax. Yeah, beta videotapes were invented in 1975 so that we could eventually all go to Blockbuster Videos on Friday nights, rent a movie we've never heard of, and sit around at home disappointed and praying that we rewound it before we brought it back. In 1975, the first Apple I computer was created. And my favorite math lessons of my life were forced upon us because in 1975, the United States Congress passed the Metric Conversion Act, which encouraged metrification in the United States. Oh, that was the worst. How many liters are in a gallon? I don't know. I'm in 4th grade. Leave me alone. Okay. When we look back, we gain a few things. We gain insight into ourselves and our past. We gain context into our issues and challenges. We get wisdom because we reflect upon the lessons learned in our lives. And we see the pathway from excellence to presence and to excellence in the future. Because excellence is never achieved if it is sought. Because excellence is not a destination, it is a mindset, constantly learning, going, and growing. Okay, let's disrupt history a little bit this year with a new strategy. And the new strategy is to stop trying to go about all of this alone. Nothing I shared with you prior, from 1925 to 1975 to now 2025, was done in isolation. All of those things were done collaboratively with other people. All of those historical events happened with people, not a person. They were all collaborative. They were all done together. The reason I wanted to do the look back was to really get you thinking about, what has all happened? I mean, what has happened since January 1st of 2024? A ton, and it's remarkable, especially in your life. That's 365 days. That's lots of hours. That's lots of opportunities to grow, improve, and serve other people. It is also the greatest opportunity to reflect upon where were your learning opportunities and what were you going to do about it. But let's disrupt things a little bit this year with a new strategy, because history will repeat itself if we allow it. And history is, number one, we need to stop believing we can fundamentally change ourselves in big ways overnight. Yes, step one for this year's resolution is to stop thinking you can change everything in a big way overnight. According to Dr. Cynthia Vinnie, in order to see a lasting change, you have to be in a state of discomfort for a really long period of time, which is why people tend to set resolutions on New Year's Eve that are really big. And they might be achievable, but there are probably 30 steps they needed to take before they got to the place, so they found success. And so People make these unattainable goals by not setting smaller, more immediate goals. So step 1 is stop believing that tomorrow you're going to be this super healthy individual and start believing that you can do it fundamentally differently by doing it incrementally. And that means step 2, which is to be realistic. According to research, promises, also known as New Year's resolutions to ourselves, are something that we use to pledge a fresh start for a better future. Yet, beneath all of the excitement and optimism lies a stark reality. And that is that only 1% of people who make resolutions stick to them all the way until the end of the year. And of that, only 6% of them manage to actually change their lives for the long term. Ted, this is the Smart Thinking Podcast, fueled by optimism. What are you doing here? Well, let's get to step 3 then. Consider your change management strategies. What is your compelling reason for change? Is it that you want it or you need it? Are these desires? Because desires are useless when it comes to improving. That's things like, I really wish I was, I really want to. No, you actually have to, I will statements. I will do these things. I need to do these things. Statements like this, like I want to read more, I wish I ate less, they only lead to failure because step 4 is that you likely don't have any realistic measures in place to measure your progress over time. In order to make your resolution stick, you need to create a diagram that shows exactly where you will be at the end of each week. 52 micro steps. Remember the research that demonstrates why people give up on things? It's because there are too many steps. From the start, if you have an aspiration, well, that is something that you can continue to aspire to, but if you put in place a process and a plan, you'll get to. We all zealously approach goals and forget the steps. It's pretty difficult in life to say things like, I want to be a great pastry chef, and never buy a cookbook or take a class. What does each step look like, and can you measure the progress? And step 5, well, this is going to be the hardest, which is to maintain motivation. Measuring smaller steps can help you maintain motivation. An example, don't look at the scale every day. It will motivate and demotivate you at the same time. It'll justify really weird behavior. Pick one day, weigh in, and track it. And by the way, never on Mondays. And when you lose weight, don't see that as a green light to eat a couple of cookies, constantly calling your name from the cabinet. See that as an opportunity to celebrate. Micro steps for macro outcomes. That's how we maintain motivation. If we say, I'm going to lose weight this year, that's 365 days to procrastinate to eventually get to that goal, which you will forget until you get to a point where you say, you know what, I'll wait for my birthday, or this summer I will, or you know what, after the holidays I'm going to start again. You know what, I'm just going to wait till next year now. Always the things that we say to ourselves. Finally, the last step that will be the difference maker for you, step 6, is the one I want to introduce to you, which is resolution by committee. Yeah, we need to get other people involved in our lives, especially when we're trying to change it. It's just too hard to do it by ourselves because our brain allows us to go on these little wandering journeys where we can justify to ourselves, maybe not today. I'll just take this month off of that little resolution. So how do you focus on being realistic, taking small steps, being reasonable in the change, having measures and maintaining motivation? Well, you stop doing it alone. That's right, friends. We need to do resolution by committee. We need to challenge others to step into the space with us. We need to find like-minded people that we love or live with or work with and do it together. Me? It's so easy to quit on yourself. We is really hard to walk away from. I'm going to say that again. Me is easy to quit on. We is hard to walk away from. So here's my strategy. You get a group of like-minded colleagues, friends, or family members, and you set a joint resolution. That's right. Have a little signing day. We stand resolved to do the following things because we're going to create accountability partnerships. We will, in resolution, not I will by myself. We will get this done. I can't do these things alone. I've never been able to do them alone. And I think I'm speaking for all of us. So why by committee? Number 1, accountability. It is so easy to talk to your inner voice and tell it to shut up, or justify one more cookie, or I'm just going to have some carbs with lunch today, or skipping the walk, or adjust a couple of minutes I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes on my TikTok. I know I tried to give it up, but I'm just going to do one thing. And the next thing you know, 3 hours has gone by and you've sent 300 photos of French bulldogs to your friends. Or I'll start saving money next week. I'm just going to spend a little extra right now. However, if you have an accountability partner, it's a whole new process. Here's the process. You identify your partners. You determine the behaviors that we're going to change together. You detail the benchmarks. You list the measures. You schedule check-ins, either in a Zoom, on a FaceTime, or in a room together. Because it's very easy to lie to yourself, but it's pretty hard when it's someone else you care about working with you. Let me give you those steps again. Number 1, I'm going to pick my accountability partners. Who's my committee? Number 2, we are going to determine what's the behavioral change we're going to do. We're going to detail the benchmarks by when and then how we're going to do it. And then finally listing the measures. And then we're going to schedule a weekly time to check in with each other so that we can hold each other accountable. Because if it's not my voice that's going to motivate me, it's going to be the other people's voices when I hear them say like, oh, come on, Ted, how come you didn't do it? So what does it look like? Well, I want you to reflect for a moment. What are the things that are bugging you in your life? These things that are bothering you, friends, well, those are other things that we call your storms. Is it a professional thing? Is it a personal thing? Is it a physical, mental, financial thing? Is it a new habit you want to create? Is it learning you want to do? What is it? What's bugging you? Because if it's bugging you, we need to approach it. Once you identify your resolution, then it's time to go fishing. Start inquiring with other people around you and see if you can take a team approach. Build your committee. Who are other people that have a similar issue to you? For instance, if I were a teacher, I am constantly hearing about the shifts in the behaviors of our youngest children, especially kindergarten behaviors. If I were a kindergarten teacher, I would get together with a bunch of other kindergarten teachers, either those that I worked with or those that I knew, and I would put together a goal. For instance, around the behaviors, because they're increasingly beyond what I can manage and what I'm hearing about. So who are the other people in your world that can work this opportunity with you? And then go through the steps. Step 1, let's identify the accountability partners. Who are the 3 or 4 other friends in teaching that could support you and work with you on this goal? Why should you be by yourself trying to figure this out? Why should you lean up into the organization and hope that they can help you when you know that you will be in that room by yourself every day dealing with it? Why deal with it? Why even have to do it by yourself? If it's bugging you, let's fix it. So identify the other people who could help you on the journey. Then determine the behavior changes that you want to make in yourselves. For instance, 5-year-olds that are increasingly aggressive, what are we going to do differently? Well, detail the benchmarks. We will read this book by this time. We will interview and work with others on this date. We will study. We will observe. We will seek professional development. We will look to experiment and see what types of intervention work and then share those with others. And then list the measures. I'm going to see a reduction in behavioral issues and an increase in my positivity when I leave from school every day. And then I'm going to schedule a check-in a Zoom or in a room. Meaning I'm going to touch base every Friday at 4 o'clock for 30 minutes to do a checkout on my week to see what worked for myself, what I learned from my week, and then what my friends did or what they didn't do that helped them or hurt them in their practice so that we can grow and learn together. That, my friends, is resolution by committee. Then, as we are learning and growing together, we can capture those things, share them with others, and be leaders. Let's talk about steps for losing weight. Everybody around me right now is talking about, I've got to lose some weight because we all gorged over the holidays. Well, number 1, let's identify accountability partners. Is it your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your neighbor, your friend, your colleague? Who is it? And then determine the behavior you want to change. You can't just say, I'm going to lose weight. It's not even a thing. What you need to do is you need to increase other things or decrease other things. Like I'm going to increase exercise and modify my diet. Key word there is modify my diet. You can't just go on a whole new thing. And if you can, good for you. It's hard to sustain. But friends, if you do it with other people, it's pretty awesome. Detail the benchmarks. By July 1st, I want to maintain a new weight, giving myself 6 months to get there, lower my blood pressure, and have better cholesterol numbers. My measures? Well, in 30 days, I want to be down 2 pounds. In 60 days, I want to be down a total of 6 pounds. And in 90 days, I want to be down 10 pounds so that for the 90 days, I'm getting there. And I'm maintaining that new weight for a year, checking in on July 1st with my friends. And I'm going to schedule a check-in, a Zoom or a room. I'm only going to weigh in on Wednesdays in a FaceTime with the entire committee. I'm going to work out with other people. I mean, can you imagine for a moment the accountability you would feel to yourself and others if every Wednesday you turned on your camera, stood on your scale, took a picture, and sent it to your friends? That would be amazing. That's what working through committee on your resolutions does. It's going to be an increased sense of accountability, not just to yourself, but to those that you love who you've invited in on the journey with you. Remember, only 1% of the people in the world achieve their resolution after 1 year. That's really sad. And the reason is because we're constantly negotiating against ourselves, and there's always tomorrow. Procrastination on your own improvement is the reason we wait for this annual New Year's resolution. We've been procrastinating to start anew until we get to the new year. All of us do it. Now, this process can be applied to any improvement opportunity that presents itself no matter what time of the year, because the process is simple. Identify your committee, identify the partners, determine the behavior change that you're going to make, detail the benchmarks, list the measures, and then schedule check-ins. That, my friends, is the way to make resolutions stick. We fail when we are alone. The reality is it's just too easy to take something and then give up on it, which is why if we resolve by committee, it'll work because there will be other people around us encouraging us. You're building a herd here. We'd all have to quit, and that is unlikely. Did you hear that? If we build a herd and one of us wants to quit, we'd all have to quit. That's unlikely going to happen. No one knows yourself better than you, so find your herd. Lone buffaloes rarely find the success needed to get through their storms because their strength comes from numbers, from courage, from examples. You want to be a lone buffalo and grow? I doubt it'll happen because there are too many distractions and detractors. 1% of those who make resolutions see them through for the entire year? Lone buffaloes, you know what? That sounds like a bar you'd go to drown out your sorrows out west. Hold on a second. I just Googled that. Weird. I just looked it up. There's a Lone Buffalo Bar and Grill in Ottawa, Illinois, which is 195 miles from my house. I'll meet you all there on July 1st to celebrate our progress. Okay, resolution by committee. Why? More likely to find success. You have a group of collectively minded people cheering you on and working together. You have accountability partners. You have the opportunity to share in the journey, collectively problem solving when there are issues and collectively celebrating the successes. And most importantly, you're not alone. Resolutions, smesolutions. It's time to make them stick and get yourself improving. Put yourself first by joining a team that'll always put you first when you need to be put first. And know that you will always put them first as well. Because that's what leaders do. You know what we do? We see the storm. We find a process. We go to it, get to it, and we get through it. And this year, we're going to do that by committee. So let's do some smart thinking. List who your resolution committee will be. Describe your commitment to self-growth and improvement, and list the people who would benefit from this process. And a bonus one, here we go, number 4. Describe how you will be different on December 31st, 2025. That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you for listening. Take this challenge and run with it. And also make sure to share this podcast with others who might need it. Remember, this podcast wasn't just about resolutions. It's a change management process to support you and your learning and growing. So help me help others by spreading the word. Also, thank you to the Well Pennies for their great music and Golden Bear Studios in Iowa for always providing us the opportunity to entertain you at the end of the podcast with some fantastic music. Also, here's my resolution that I'm making public to you. If you go onto Spotify and type in Smart Thinking Ted Neitzke, there's a podcast link, but now there's also a playlist. I will post on the Smart Thinking Facebook page a scan code for the Spotify playlist. What I'm going to do this year is new songs that I hear, because I can't put them on the podcast. It's a little too expensive for that license. I will be able to drop into my Spotify playlist for you, and it's called Smart Thinking Music Playlist for 2025. It'll just be fun songs, no themes, just things I've discovered and I want to share. Okay, let's close out here. My hopes for you as a smart thinker this coming year are these. I hope you have days of joy sprinkled with small storms. I hope that you find ways to be your best for others. I hope that you remember that a problem is just an opportunity for a process. I hope that you enjoy friendships that are deep and true. I hope that your heart is strong, your mindset firm, and your convictions even stronger. I hope you get to operate every day using your strengths. I hope that you spread optimism like sunshine in the desert. And I hope that you recognize how big of a deal you actually are. Now, quickly, this podcast and idea actually came from my watch. You see, I have an Apple iWatch. It's a complicated relationship. I like it, but as a guy with attention deficit hyperactivity gifts, it's pretty distracting. But a few years back, my brother and I, as well as my son, we occasionally started to challenge each other on our fitness app for 1 or 2 weeks at a time. And every single time, I'd find myself hyper about the goals for the day. I'd got to get my movement in. I'd have to get my calorie burns. I'd have to have active calories and steps and new fitness things to get all of my challenge points. Now, I love to compete and I hate to lose, especially to my little brother. It's kind of the oldest brother thing I have to deal with. Well, for multiple weeks in a row, he was crushing me daily, and I couldn't understand it. I mean, I literally 5 days a week run. 2 days a week, I walk significant distances. I lift, I exercise, I do extra cardio. I was walking more during this time period. I was lifting weights. I even started using the dance mode on my watch just to get more calories while I was watching TV. And yes, embarrassingly, I was dancing. Anyway, I was, of course, never really paying attention to my brother's app. Only my own. We had similar targets. And weirdly, we have jobs that cause us to be seated much more than either of us want. So every day to burn through as many calories as we want was sort of a challenge. But he would walk 1/8 of a mile and record it, and he'd get himself some points. And then I'd get an alert. I'd look down and it would say, Tom just walked, 0.2 miles. And I'd think to myself, man, he's really crushing it. Well, one day, I really didn't pay much attention to the alerts because they just came in so often. But one day I get an alert from him that shows 35 minutes of activity. It was in the middle of the day, and we had talked in the morning, and I was like, that's kind of weird. I thought he had meetings all day. And I look at the activity, and it says mind and body. I'm like, what is this? It gives you a burned calorie credit equivalent of walking for 35 minutes. Turns out my brother was clicking it occasionally when he was in a meeting, and it was just showing him as if he was meditating and resting his mind, but he wasn't, and that's how he was beating me. He was getting credits for walking while he was sitting in a meeting. Well, the next day I clicked mind and body at the start of a 3-hour meeting and closed it when I left, and suddenly I was in the lead. I recorded a calorie burn equivalent of running across the state of Texas. But it did something, and it taught me something. This competition. The minute I started to share my fitness with him and my son and my brother-in-law and my daughter, I felt a real sense of accountability. Then we started to comment on each other's progress. I really noticed how it changed my behavior. I'd finish a run and somebody would notice like, ooh, you went a little further than you normally do. Good job. Or I would take a walk for 1 mile and my brother would text back, did you miss the bus? The watch was creating a creeping effect on my mind. Creeping being that it was creepy in a positive way that everyone knew I had or had not exercised. And this is why resolution by committee will work. You choose a bunch of people to watch you and report to, and they choose you. Herds grow together quickest through shared pain and success. So you don't have to have an iWatch. You just need a committee. You need to get together once a week for 30 minutes, share your pluses and deltas, have the conversation, coach each other up, motivate yourselves, go 52 straight weeks by setting benchmarks, and find yourself at the end of the year a fundamentally better version of you. So this year, let's make the journey better and more successful by growing our herd, resolving to be better for others by being together, and charging into the storms in new ways.
You start my heart when you walk out your car. We talked there for hours. I heard you laugh, gave me a heart attack, yeah. Like some superpower. If you're my hero, I need saving. Your smile is what I'm craving. What a beautiful miracle it is. Figure it out. I needed someone to help lift me up. off the ground. Heroes exist, baby, a gift of light brings me close to the light. Why didn't I see it before? It take me back to when we were singing songs under the stars. Not a worry in our minds, flowing in and out of time. At the speed of light, you ran straight into my life. You can control every thought in my mind. Figuring out I needed someone to help lift me off the ground. Yeah, heroes exist, maybe a gift of light brings me close to the light. Why didn't I see it before? Wanna get a bit closer to you. Wanna feel your power, yeah. I figured out you were that someone to help lift me off the ground, yeah. Heroes exist, baby, a gift of light brings me close to the light. Why